Well, welcome out there to my program. Always a pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure to have you out there in the audience. We've got the panel show, and we've got some really good issues. A lot of things have happened since the last show, and well, I think the public could be aware of a lot of these things, but then again, sometimes I know you have busy schedules and things get by. But we're going to get right to the first one, which has been you might call a resounding reversal. And that is in regards to the senior center downtown on South Main Street. As you recall, the senior center was closed. And there was quite an uproar about that because there are a lot of seniors in that area. So I'm going to welcome my guests. Bob, how you doing?
Pleasure to be here,
again.
Richard, as always.
And Big Dan,
Richard,
how's things going?
Good to see you. Glad to be back again.
Your father, his nickname was Roby.
Roby, that's right.
Big Roby.
Yep.
Dan, you're down there in the thick of things on South Main Street. That's where the hive of all that scuttlebutt swirls around.
Well, you know.
What's going on? What happened with the reversal of the senior center from
Richard,
closure to opening?
Look, Richard, this is completely for political gain in an election year. $40,000 was alleged to be saved. It was Dr. Valancourt, at the direction of Mayor Sutter, closed the senior center down. 5 buildings right in the vicinity of that general senior center: Hudner Building, Academy Building, Tecumseh Mills, Borden East, and Borden West.
All senior apartments, seniors live?
Well, mixed use, but each one has a segment of senior population. Okay, there's some elderly, some disabled, and but there are a good number of seniors in all those buildings.
Well, let me ask you this before you continue in regards to disabled. Now, disabled people have a privilege to enter the senior center?
Absolutely.
As a senior would enter?
Yes.
So, in other words...
That's allowed for under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
All right, so it wasn't only shutting out the seniors, but it was shutting out the disabled?
Correct. Yeah, but it's not as widely known that disabled people are eligible to access senior centers, but in fact they are under the Americans with Disabilities Act. But clearly this was an election year ploy on the part of Mayor Sutter, and that's why it was done, in my opinion.
Bob, that must have been a heavy blow to you. You're a senior.
Yeah, well, you know, it was a blow because it showed the insensitivity of the mayor and city government to the people, to, you know, the regular people. You know, we have, as Danny said, we have the disabled community, and we also have the senior citizens who had a place to go, very close, in close proximity. They talked about this like it was a huge savings. It was nothing.
$41,000?
Yeah, $40,000. But they were paying somebody over that to drive the bus to take them to another senior center.
Put them on trolleys?
Yeah, they put them on trolleys and paid somebody even more. So they saved nothing. But it was just, look, it was a political ploy.
Tell a trolley driver, I forgot my medication.
Exactly.
Can you turn it off?
Yeah. And, you know, but the thing is, he's spending this money and he's talking about savings when in actuality it was another facade to say, oh, we're trying to save some money, when in actually they weren't, and it was insensitive. And now obviously he's taken heat. He knows he's in you know, people are not happy with what he's doing as mayor, and now he's trying to rebuild as much of the community as he can by doing things like he reversed his position. But the reality is this shouldn't have been done in the first place.
So a savings of $40,000, but a position created in the 6th floor in the law department, 18 and a half hours a week?
18 and a half hours a week for $92,000 a year.
$92,000.
960 hours. It comes out to, I think,
so
well over 95.
So the seniors are going to take a trolley.
Yep.
And,
yeah. And Joe Macy can afford socks.
Wow, this is great. I'm telling you, get into government.
He had no socks on again last night at the city council meeting.
Well, that's the yuppie. I guess that's the yuppie style. So, But $92,000 for an 18 and he can't even go to court till after January. He can't represent the city, so we're paying him $92,000. And of course, we also have Lou Pacheco, who comes under that same, making $70,000. And by the way, there was the public was misled, when he said, Lou's only making 70, he's only making 92. That's the maximum they can make without it affecting their pension under the law. That's the reason they come up with those numbers, because I can guarantee you that he would have got over 100,000 and Lou would have got more money had it not adversely affected their pensions.
Now how many people applied for those jobs?
None, because they were secret jobs. Who knows? I mean,
They weren't put out.
No, this is
they weren't
patronage is at
advertised.
its best.
All right. Now, the other controversial issue that's been swirling around in the general public is the Community Preservation Act and the money that they awarded to certain projects. What do you make of what's happened with taxpayers' money? In other words, this is taxpayers' money, which is public, but it has gone to a couple of private entities, if I'm correct.
That's correct. And 90% of it went to the north end,
To the north end.
which is the most affluent area of the city. So we're preserving what doesn't need to be preserved. Do they have enough money to preserve themselves? And we're allowing the rest of the community to go into, they're going into total disrepair.
So that's why the south end doesn't look all that well, because it doesn't get much.
Yeah.
And of course, we don't want to lower the lifestyle of people in the north end. That would be prejudicial.
Yeah. To the 1%ers.
This is the North End Preservation Act. Of
Well,
the
you
city
think,
of Fall River. And look, the city council, there was a resolution last night in regards to appropriation of the funding and setting all that up. It hasn't come for a final vote yet, but they won't vote any of it down, I'm sure, but they should, because most of those projects were not worthy, in my opinion.
Now, there was how much went to Abbey Grill? That's privately owned. Do you have any figure?
I'm not sure.
I forgot off the top. The one that really stuck in my craw was the $192,000 for the air conditioning. And that's only half. That was half of it.
And what is that?
So I don't know what kind of air conditioning unit you get for almost $400,000.
And what does that preserve?
But that preserves the president of a local college's spouse's comfort when she's at work at the.
$400,000 worth?
It's amazing though how the cost of everything when the government does it is so expensive. It's just like the almost $4 million they're looking at now to spend on a Westall school. It's like $4 million for a roof and some upgrades, and it's like, God, you could almost build a. You could rehab a lot of homes for that kind of money.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how government, everything the government does, they pay 10 times more than everybody else does, and it's made about 10 times worse than everybody else's work.
And of course,
$4 million, you could get a fairly modern chateau these days.
That's right.
and of course, it was interesting because as they were outlining some of the upgrades for the Westall School, the architects, Stark Architects, made sure to emphasize that the building had to be brought up to handicap accessibility codes, as if that's where most of the money was going, the allegation. So, $4 million to bring a school online, which I think is needed to reduce class size, but I think those estimates are way overbloated, and we ought to look at that again.
Well, they had a functioning school called a Belial.
Yes, the heck
South
of a
End.
lot. That's right. But where was that in the South End?
Oh, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's it.
now that could not be used for class size.
No, not in the
decrease
South
because it
End.
was
There's
in the
nobody
South
lives
End.
in the South End.
All right, so all the way from the south end, the
They-
deep south end,
they
Mount
sold
Hope
that building,
Avenue,
Rich.
State Avenue. If you live down there, you got to trek halfway across the city. Now, the Belial was there.
Yep.
And it could have been used, but,
Well, you know, the thing is that yesterday I caught I caught the end of it. I turned on the news and they were showing, I don't know whether, because it's the Westall and the Wiley School, they were talking about maybe trying to reopen that school. And they actually had a video of one of the schools, and I don't know which one it was because I came in at the tail end, but it was deplorable to watch. They talked about how they had to work on the soffits and stuff, and you looked at it, and there was a pigeon living in the soffit. There's no fascia board. They showed some of the windows. The windows looked like they hadn't had a coat of paint on them in 50 years. And my question is on these things is we look at these buildings, and they're in such disrepair. And there is a maintenance budget in the school department and DCM, and they by ordinance, DCM and the school department have to maintain these buildings. And we look at these buildings and we look at these things, and it was incredible. It looked like Detroit. The pigeon was coming out and like waving at the cameras, and while it walked back into the soffit, and the paint, it looked like it hadn't seen a coat of paint in 50 years.
was it a rare pigeon?
It was a rare. It was a South End pigeon. It was a rare.
Well, we'll ask Bill Damaris to give us the DNA on pigeons.
Now, how about the Hicks School on Harriet T. Healy on Hicks Street?
Hicks, South End again, Richard. Will you?
No.
No, South End, that's it.
Because
end of discussion.
So maybe the city will buy back one of the schools it sold?
Yeah.
Believe the Healy has been sold. Both the Westall and the Wiley are still under the jurisdiction of the Fall River School Department.
Which is why they're looking at those two schools to rehab.
Yep.
Because we can spend some money. We love to spend money.
Well, let me ask you this, if you know, but the rumor is, and maybe it's not a rumor, but the so-called balanced budget is not balanced?
Well, I'm not sure if it's balanced, but I don't know how it can be balanced since 2 months ago at the retirement board meeting, Mr. Nunes said they wanted to pay the retirement late because they were having a cash flow problem. So the last time I checked, if your budget's balanced, you can pay your bills. You know, you don't delay paying a bill. If you went before the council and said that the budget is balanced, there's an implication in it that you know what's due, and you have the money to cover what's due within your budget.
So when a budget was passed, it was passed on a basis of revenue coming in,
Right.
and the expenses that the city would incur.
Yeah.
And those were in balance.
Well, that's his fiduciary responsibility. When he sets up a budget, they know what is due, when it's due, and they also have to set a cash flow that has to be factored in. Now, when that budget was voted on, supposedly these things were in place. However, they tried to pay late, and we have an issue over that. And also, Mr. Nunes put in $146,000 and change into an employee account, which showed it was city revenue when in fact it wasn't. It was employee revenue. So that was off on the budget. So was the budget accurate? Is the budget balanced? Based on what's going on, I don't really see that the budget is balanced, because if it was balanced, we wouldn't have to be having basically a full-blown war over getting paid on time at the retirement board.
Okay, and just going off from that a little, pay as you throw is still not ordinance.
Well, yeah.
Is that correct?
No, at the last council meeting 2 weeks ago, the bag ordinance was finally passed.
All right, so
6-3.
Okay, so you have to put out the
With an
purple-
emergency preamble,
Yes,
which really wasn't, there was no necessity for emergency.
correct.
So you got to use the purple bags. Is that correct?
Yep.
And if you don't use the purple bag, you can be cited. And if you don't pay the whatever the fine is, you can be brought to court.
My understanding is those citations go to the Fall River Housing Court.
All right, so it's we might say law now. The city does have an ordinance as far as pay as you throw.
Yep.
But pay as you throw apparently hasn't done as well as it was expected.
Well, we bailed it out in the last budget, yeah, to the tune of, I believe, what, 6.5, Chip? That number
Yeah.
sticks in my head.
Yeah.
When you talk about balanced budget, balanced budgets, in the last 2 budget cycles, we have had shortfalls of approximately $22.5 million. So please explain to me how any budget can be balanced. Only in Fall River / Sutter / Flanagan economics can you have $22.5 million shortfalls in 2 budget cycles and get the public to believe that this fiscal house is in balance or in order.
Well, they better change the scales that they have, because
Well, we have the power of the borrowing. Kathy Ann, I believe at the last meeting, said that we are nowhere near our debt ceiling, which is absurd because we're so deep in debt now, we're on the verge of receivership. But said we're nowhere near our debt ceiling, and I believe Mr. Nunes, when asked if anybody checks our credit, he said no, that's his job. So, you know, the reality is what we're doing here is kicking the can down the road, bonding, short-term bonds, long-term bonds, loans, and, you know, we're subsidizing things and we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and anybody who thinks the budget is balanced needs to have a serious psychological examination, because, as I said, if the budget in fact was balanced, they could pay their bills. And I know that I still haven't gotten confirmation, even though I asked for it, that they are going to pay their bill to the retirement system on
so
time.
in other words, what you're saying is somebody better check the weights and make
Yeah.
sure there's no lead
Exactly,
inside.
yeah. Because there are 2 things that, by the way, their numbers guy, who I have a lot of respect
I was
for,
just
Alan
gonna say,
Silva,
Yep.
told them in his transition report there are 2 things in this budget that you have to pay on time: your debt service and the retirement. Yet they've already tried to duck out on the retirement. So if anybody believes that these numbers are accurate, as I said, they've been drinking way too much Kool-Aid.
Okay, let's go from that pay-as-you-throw to the $10 apartment fee. Now, as the story goes, pay-as-you-throw wasn't doing that well, and to get enough money into the DPW, what do you call that, the DCM now,
DCM.
Department of Community Maintenance,
Yeah, a new euphemism.
the $10 per apartment fee was instituted. Now, that's been very controversial over the last several months or so, and people who have buildings, they might have vacant apartments. So the city came up with a, might say, a compromise or a way to alleviate people paying an apartment fee if no one is there, which means that if an apartment that you have in a 3-decker, 2-decker, 4, 6, whatever it is vacant, and you can prove you're not going to use that apartment, then you're going to be eligible for an abatement. So, the form that came out, which I was told was sent last Friday. And last Friday, of course, I put in the mail. You have maybe not a delivery Saturday to your house for some reason. If you put it late in the mail on a Friday afternoon, probably not going to get it Saturday. Sundays, they don't deliver. Monday was a holiday. The bill came into a lot of people received this bill today, which is if you have an apartment, you're going to have to pay $120 per apartment. You get 2, that's $240. You get 3, that's $360. Now here's the curious part about this whole thing. So if you got it today and you want to get an abatement, you have to file for an abatement by next Tuesday. Now, hopefully a lot of people are going to notice that on the back, so that they don't hold this bill past Tuesday. Because if you do hold it past Tuesday, you might get a demand notice, which is going to cost you an additional $10. And on top of the demand notice, they're saying they'll be charging 14% interest.
Like a credit card.
Now, you have to wonder how many people are going to miss this.
I would say many.
Many. It's
and-
not
and-
too difficult to almost, believe
one
that this
week,
was
basically-
intentionally done because most people, have difficulty reading. Get this, they're not going to read it. They won't get to a day or two. They'll begin to read it, and then by the time they figure it out, the deadline will be gone, and now they're going to get more interest. And and that's the key. The key is let's ask the $64,000 question. Why has the DCM not been self-funding? It's supposed to be an enterprise fund, and by the admission of the city, it has never sustained itself, when in fact, when it was established as an enterprise fund, it was supposed to be a self-sustaining entity. So we're paying for their mismanagement again. The taxpayer again is being hit because of the ineptness of city government.
And I want to remind people, or notify people out there, that the so-called abatement, I have it right here, it's an application for an abatement of household trash fee. One page, 2, 3-page application. So you'll need to get this application soon, and you'll need to file it before the 15th, or you're going to be in jeopardy of incurring a $10 notice fee, demand notice fee, and 14% interest. So I did go to the City Hall today to get one of these, and there was no long line. So I'm wondering,
That's because people haven't read it.
And
Or
some
haven't
people
got it?
probably haven't even gotten it yet. You're right. Richard.
I thought I'd face a long line, but I didn't. There was only one person before me and didn't quite understand this at all.
Wow. And many won't, and I expect DCM to get very busy over the next several months and weeks and beyond while this is in play. You know, going back a city council meeting or two ago, I remember Joe Camara, Linda Pereira, and others requesting that for the initial distribution of this material, that there be an extension given on these abatements. Apparently that was never done, never voted upon, never acted upon, but
Well, let me ask you this. Let's say this was placed in Herald News, something to that effect. We could actually just clip it out.
Is that document available online? We have a website too.
It probably is.
Yeah.
But, you have a lot of people who just don't even have a computer.
That's right. Well, don't forget, they used to use a computer at the Flint Library, but Sam closed that too.
Well,
for the same $40,000 as he reopened the senior center, I urge him before the preliminary or the general to reopen the library in the Flint.
all right,
People's University. They don't want they don't want the people to educate themselves.
But I suspect, look, the next city council meeting is approximately a week after the preliminary election on the 28th or the 29th, whatever the Tuesday is. I suspect that
there's no city council meeting next Tuesday,
No, the last city council meeting before the preliminary was held last night.
because they'd get an earful about this, I think.
I got a feeling the next meeting there's going to be a few irate citizens, I think.
I don't think everyone is going to meet the deadline.
I think most of the people.
How many households do you have in a city? 25,000 buildings?
Yeah.
How many apartments? Thousands more.
How many days is that?
They gave that figure at one of the.
6 to 7, Richard?
Well, today's Wednesday, and this is due Tuesday.
So 6 days.
Well, that's if you have it. Some people may not have
Correct.
gotten it. They may not get it till tomorrow.
And of course,
And they might not understand it.
That's right.
and of course, back to the technical language. That
But you
was-
won't get the application. All you do is get the bill.
Yeah. Then you have to go down and
And you
procure.
have to procure, exactly.
Hey.
Either go down, or I guess it could be online.
That's 6 days with a weekend mixed in.
That's right.
So back to the technical language that we faced in the recall.
Oh.
Is it 6 days or 6 business days?
Well, if you get it today, you got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday.
Everybody
That's
gets fined. Don't forget, Macy's getting $92,000. He rendered that opinion on the emergency preamble. Yep, you can't have a, my legal opinion is you can have an emergency preamble.
Okay, last subject, last issue is the big one,
The big one.
window gate. When is that going to ever go away?
Never. We'll never find out.
Only the shadow knows?
Only the shadow knows for sure what evil lurks in the hearts and minds of men. Yeah, the window gate, will never be solved unless the feds get involved, because the reality is, we're looking at getting politicians, and if you look at the reality.
Well, let me just interject 1 second, because what came out of the 6th floor is that the Attorney General is not looking into this. There's another agency that's been requested to look into Windowgate, but that agency, its name could not be divulged. What does that mean?
Could be anything. Could be the CIA, or, NASA, or I don't know. But I don't know.
Does this have something to do with national security?
It could be. I mean, how could you actually
Now, why would
install
you-
windows in the mayor's office and not get caught? That could be like agents from ISIS. I don't know.
Why would you have an agency that's going to look into this matter, but you can't divulge the name of the agency?
You're the attorney, Richard. Answer that. I don't know. All I know is, listen, we're looking at putting the blame on politicians and politically connected people, and we all know that it's very rare to have one of these people prosecuted. If we look back, whenever they walked out a Speaker of the House, it normally wasn't a state or local agency walking him out of the House in handcuffs. It was a federal agency.
Well, you have Sean Kadim, who was the chief of staff at the time windows were put in. He's running for city council. What do you make of his position in this?
Well, I mean, he was questioned on it, and
Let's say he becomes a city councilor, and all of a sudden this becomes a criminal investigation in some manner.
well, that's an extremely good question.
I would say he'd have to recuse himself on any matters pertaining to it. He was questioned at the time this first broke. It was stated that he gave a fully sworn statement to Chief Racine.
Well, there was a movie, Casablanca,
Ooh.
and when the chief of police, the prefect of police, found out gambling was going on in Rick's place, where he used to frequent almost every night and gamble, he was shocked to find out, to learn about that. Do we have some sort of a scenario like that?
Yeah, well, you remember the end of that when they walked away on the airstrip. It was just the beginning of a
Good relationship?
of a good friendship. Yeah.
Well, okay. I enjoyed myself. I got a lot of good information. Thank you, panelists. Bob?
Thank you, Richard. Always a pleasure.
Dan?
Stay angry out there, people. Vote in the primary. Let's send a message.
Okay, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.